In this video, I want to talk about why many innovative indie games get unnoticed and what to do about it. So the reason most innovative indie games get unnoticed is because being unique alone doesn't attract players. Innovation needs a bridge. So what I mean is the player needs an anchor that will emotionally connect with what they're familiar with something they're not familiar with. So if there is no bridge between the new and the old, that innovation can feel alien, it can be confusing, or is just simply irrelevant. And that's the key takeaway here is most new innovative, features just seem irrelevant to the player because without that bridge, a player has no idea if that innovation is any good or not. So it's our job to bridge that gap between something new and crazy that you're doing with your game with something the player is familiar with. All right, so my name is Dariusz. Thanks for being here and thanks for subscribing. So first, let me show you a real life example of how an indie game dev was able to get noticed in a genre, a very competitive genre where being different was a bad thing. And then I'll give you a step-by-step guide on how to market your innovative features in a way that gets you noticed. Okay, so an example I'm going to talk about is the game Old World, and I want to talk about how your innovations need to justify their existence. So if you watch Soren Johnson's postmortem about his game Old World, and the link is in the description below, he spent almost the whole entire talk talking about the problems in the 4X genre, and then he talked about how he fixed those problems and those frustrations. Then he talked about how he bridged those big problems and frustrations players had in the genre with his new innovative features. So for example, the tech tree is a staple in 4X games and it helps players, set goals. But also some players may dislike the tech tree because, it can feel predictable and can make, the game less more strategic. And because, tech trees are a fixed path, that leads to players, repeating the same optimal strategies over and over again. And so what basically happens is, the player doesn't explore different avenues. So to fix this, Johnson created the tech deck. It's basically where, all the techs are placed in one draw pile and then shuffled, like in a card game. And then whenever, the player completes a tech, cards will be drawn from this shuffled deck and the player can choose one card from that, shuffle. And then another feature he came up with was the undo button. So in 4X games, they'll punish you, the players, if you're not paying attention, right? And when you're, in late game and you have 100 units, that means you have to make, 100 decisions. So no matter how hard you try, you're going to not pay attention at one point and you'll eventually mess up. You'll do a misclick or you'll, be just absent-mindedly doing stuff and you'll forget about those units. So to fix that, you were able to, auto your workers and your units. But what happens is now the game becomes boring. So when Johnson, added the undo button, the player now won't be punished for, making small mistakes or not paying attention. And also the undo button lets the player experiment, with strategies and try new things that they normally wouldn't. And this is, a brand new thing that, the 4X genre never seen before. And these are just two examples of, new novel features that Old World added in the 4X genre. And in the video, Johnson's video, he talks about at least 10 of them. But here's the thing. These innovations were not done for the sake of being novel or new or, just alone cool innovations, right? Each innovation, each feature, each, system he introduced justified its own existence. So what I mean is each feature was anchored to a problem or frustration, a player had in the 4X genre. So when a player, sees a feature like the tech deck or the undo button, it's easy to, emotionally bridge that innovation feature to something that they're familiar with. Because when your new innovative feature solves a problem in your genre, it doesn't feel alien, it doesn't feel like it's out of place or it's confusing, and more importantly, it feels relevant to the player. And this isn't, just for the 4X genre, right? Every genre has a system that often frustrates the player and, causes problems. And if your new innovative feature can, remove those frustrations, then the player can easily get excited about how you're trying to, push your genre further and better. But again, if you just have a unique feature for the sake of being different, then the player has no anchor, right? There's nothing to hold on to. And so what happens is if the player does see this feature, it goes unnoticed because it means nothing to them. Okay, so how do you exactly do this? And how can you use this technique to help promote your game, and build your wish list and build your audience? So let's work on that next. Okay, so in this part, I want to talk about how to anchor your innovative features to problems players have in your genre because you'll get noticed for pushing your genre forward. So the best way to make, sure players notice your innovative features is to understand what frustrations, problems, and pain points they have in your genre first. Then you need to, bridge those pain points and show how your new feature can get rid of those frustrations and, those problems. So here's a 3-step action plan. Okay, so step 1 is come up with 10 problems in your genre. So get out a pen and paper or, open a Google document. And then on top of the sheet, I want you to write down 10 problems in my genre. And then take 10 to 15 minutes, brainstorming 10 frustrations, problems, or pain points your genre has. And if you can't come up with, 10, if you can't brainstorm, then here's an idea what to do. So first come up with 3 games in your genre that's similar to yours. Then go to the Steam page and then read player reviews, because players will always tell you what they want and what they need. And don't ask game devs, don't ask your friends, go directly, to potential customers, because they will be more than happy to vent and tell you everything that is wrong and bugging them about, a certain genre or a certain game. And as you read, these reviews, pay attention to the common words and phrases that will, keep popping up over and over again. So for example, I'm marketing a Fallout RPG game right now, and doing my research, I noticed that a lot of old, school RPG enthusiasts hate modern CRPGs because they are, too streamlined and they're too hand-holdy. And what I kept hearing over and over again is that they missed the days where you created a dumb character or your build wasn't efficient, but still that added to the gameplay and made, the game fun. And so my point is, if a game dev is making, a Fallout-like RPG game and their target market is the old school RPG enthusiast, then the new game better not be streamlined and handholdy. It better allow that player to create, the character they want to build, and it doesn't matter if it's streamlined or not. Again, it's so easy to figure out what players want and don't want. All you have to do is, check out, Steam or GOG, read the game reviews, and players, like I said before, will tell you exactly what appeals to them and what doesn't appeal. So if you're not sure what frustrates your target player in your genre, then go, research a few games by reading the game reviews on Steam or GOG. Okay, let's move on to step 2, and that is bridge your innovative feature to those 10 problems. So now look over your 10 problems, the list that you have, and see how your innovative features could fix any of those problems. Or you might even come up with a new feature that you've never even thought of before, right? Remember, this is exactly what Soren Johnson did. He looked at the 4X genre, looked at all the problems and frustrations players had in that genre, and then, he developed new systems and new features that helped, fix those problems and those frustrations. So specifically, what I want you to do here is go through each of your 10 problems, then beside each of the problem, write down what feature would fix that problem. And it's okay if your features overlap, and also it's okay if you only have one feature that fixes one problem. You don't have to find 10 features or systems to fix all 10 problems, because you don't necessarily need to revolutionize your whole genre, right? Because by fixing just even one problem can help you get attention. And so then this leads me to step number 3, and that is promote your game using your innovative features. Okay, so far what you've done is, you created an emotional bridge between your innovative features with players, right? So what I mean is, when a player sees your new feature, they'll easily see how it relates to them, because that feature is now solving a problem that they can relate to. But great, now what? How do you use this technique to help, actually promote your innovative game, and start finding players and start getting wish lists? So let's do that in this step. So you know how you came up with 10 problems and then you figured out how, one feature or, many can solve that problem. So now let's leverage what you worked on and start getting noticed. So how do you do this exactly? Well, the easiest and the fastest way is to ask potential players what they think. So let me show you exactly how. And this is exactly what I do when I'm marketing a client's game that has, unique features. And I know that a gamer is going to have a lot of problems trying to understand what this feature is trying to do. So here's what you do. You go to a subreddit that is in line with your game or your genre. And so for example, I'd go to r/Fallout, and then I'd find a thread, go into the comments, and then find a user and then request a chat or, send a DM. And here's the formula. Here's the script that I use often, right? Hey, can I get your opinion on a Fallout-like game I'm making? So Fallout 1 and 2, their gameplay is clunky and outdated, and I want to see if my new combat system I'm working on is fun. So if you have time, can I send you my build and get your feedback? Thanks. So I would DM at least 10 people a day, and I would do this for a few months. And yeah, I know this promotion is tedious. It is a lot of hard work, but there's nothing, easy about trying to grow your game studio. There is no life hacks. There are no easy steps. You can't, put in the minimum amount of effort and expect the maximum amount of profits. Also, this technique works because this is how you slowly build your audience. This is how you start building, word of mouth, one person at a time. And like I said, I know this isn't easy, but this is how you build your studio slowly from the ground up. And of course, if you want me to help you, one-on-one grow your audience for your indie game, then click the description below. But I highly recommend that you learn how to find customers, because it's the number one business skill you need to grow your studio into, a profitable company. And of course, being a talented game dev and, a writer, an artist, all that stuff is important too, but that's only half of it, right? If you really want to build your studio, you got to learn how to find customers. Okay, so here's your challenge right now. So if you want your innovative indie game, to get noticed, you need to find a way to emotionally anchor your new unfamiliar feature to something a player is familiar with. And you do that by bridging their problems in a genre with your new features. So again, here's quickly what to do. Step 1 is write down 10 problems, frustrations, and pain points in your genre. And if you're stuck, go read game reviews that, for games that are similar to yours. Okay, step 2 is beside each of the 10 problems you came up with, write down a feature in your game that solves that problem. And then step 3 is promote your game by going to Reddit and asking users their opinion about your feature and how it solves a problem. All right, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Again, my name is Dariusz. Good luck with game dev and growing your game studio. Talk to you later. Bye.